others by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. In the Greek, the word worship isn't there. The word used is to serve. That's what it means originally. So if you get a book on worship, people will have many different definitions. And for many people, it seems more like you have to describe worship instead of prescribing it, because everyone has a hard time with that. As a result, the definitions are different. For example, this is a recent book on worship, like 2014. It's entitled For the Glory of God, Recovering a Biblical Theology of Worship by Daniel Block. So he defines that by true worship involves reverential human acts of submission and homage before God in response to His gracious revelation of Himself and in accordance to His will. So you have a packed definition there. And then I have a book by D.A. Carson. It's like, a whole page is a big definition of many things, which I'm not gonna go through. So that's all I'm saying is, there's some difficulties in terms of how to do that, and that's why the topic is different, and that's why the topic causes more debates. But today, I thought I'll look at something that I look at something that our church actually has, and when I mean church, I mean Presbyterian Church. We actually have the Book of Order. So, any of you guys familiar with the Book of Order?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I know it's about that thick.
No, it's really short. For those who don't know, we take our authority ultimately from Scripture, but in addition to Scripture, we have two other subsidiary kind of books, which forms part of our constitution as a Presbyterian Church. One of them is the Book of Confessions. It has confessions from way back at the beginning, first, second century up to this time. And the second book is the Book of Order, which is another book that it's pretty much based on, tries to order how things need to flow in the denomination and in the Presbyterian Church. And it's based on the Bible, what the Bible is saying, on specific things. And in that book, so that's part of the Constitution, there's a directory of worship. So this morning I'm going to spend time kind of like taking a look at that with you guys. I have copies. I didn't know there'd be, this is just the worship portion, or some of the worship portion. I only have 10, so I'm going to
Share.
share. We're going to be sharing.
Sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring.
Just the worship.
I know, can you imagine?
Only a,
The
that's
rest
only a
of
small
it.
portion.
Oh, I have it at home, it's in paper. See? Where is? You gave it to me.
I have one more.
5% of the book.
Right.
No,
1%.
Yeah, point
Anyone
one.
wants
Point
one? We have the master of the Book of Order himself.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that's yours.
All memorized.
So,
Yeah.
so we're just going to talk a little bit about worship. And this is more a general thing, a general sense. I'm going to maybe dig into it a little bit more in future Sunday school sessions. And these are just some of the pages. It's not all of it. The first part is the table of, it's actually just a table of contents. First thing I want you to see is these are table of contents for the directory of worship. It's part of the Book of Order. You can see how many chapters are there for worship.
7.
Seven chapters, all about how worship is. And within these chapters, I'm just looking at the table of contents. You got an introduction for chapter 1, what is worship? But you go chapter 2, elements of worship. What seems to be included as worship there? There's
Prayer, scripture reading.
scripture reading, baptism.
Lord's Supper.
So we got sacraments. They got what? Self-offering.
Relating to each other. Wow.
So all of that sounds like it falls under worship. So a big category. A lot of these activities are under worship, the way the church defines it, at least in Presbyterian Church. And you can see next page, chapter 3. There's specific ordering of worship. All that is when should it happen? How should the Lord's Day or Sunday is done, and daily prayer. And then in chapter 4, all about special purpose, special worship, kinds of special services that are available. And in chapter 5, there's worship and personal discipleship. And the first number, personal worship. So it's kind of like, wait a second, there's worship here in church, and there's worship personally. Yeah. So it's like our church would consider not just what we do in church worship, but there's things that we do personally ourselves, which is going to be worship. And then you got chapter 6, worship and ministry within the community of faith, meaning, how does worship relate to what we do in church? And then chapter 7, worship and the ministry of the church in the world. What does worship have to do with mission and going out there, evangelizing? So it seems like there's a relationship. There's a relationship between worship and what we do outside, and worship and how we care for each other inside in the church. So anyway, anything interesting about that or thoughts?
More to it than I thought.
What's that?
I said there's more to it than I thought.
Yeah, so that's part of what I'm trying to drive at, it is common in every church to think of the music portion as worship, and there's the preaching and all that, and that's fine. But also, you have to consider the preaching and the other things, they're all worship too, according to our book of order and according to actually the Bible, because they're going to have some scriptural supports. So it's pretty broad. So that's why I'm saying to them, oh wow, this is a broad topic. What is worship? So it's going to cover all that. We don't need to look at discipline today. We can look at it some other time. But let's go to the next page. The directory for worship. I just underlined a few things there. It's not the most important thing, but I thought I'd underline it. So this directory for worship, it's about, I guess what it's saying is that the life of the church is one, and that its worship, witness, and service are inseparable. So it's all related to each other. What we do in our worship service, it's going to be related to how we witness. It's going to be related to how we serve. So they're all interlinked, and it's going to go through all that as to why. Without even looking at this, why do you think it's related? Why do you think it's linked?
It has the same sender.
It has,
The same sender.
which is,
God.
yep, definitely. Any other reasons? Why are all these things related? Worship, witnessing, service.
Because it cannot lack of something. Like you cannot witness without learning.
Okay,
Interdependent.
okay, there's some interdependence there. You say you can't witness